Welcome to the Shed, the headquarters of CATS 3000 here in the UK. My name's Paul Levy, and I've been doing some thinking recently about a bit of jargon that may or may not mean something to you, but hopefully if you've clicked on play, you're interested in something called large group interventions. And that term is a kind of umbrella term for a range of approaches often used by facilitators in organisations to really get as many people in the room as possible in order to explore and bring about change. And sometimes that change is necessary by getting everybody in the room who has a stake in that change. And so it's a kind of, for some people, a rough and ready process, but for others it actually can bring about quite significant focus change quite quickly. If you read a writer called Marvin Weisbord, who came up with something called future search, you'll also hear about another bit of jargon called whole systems change. That if we want to change the whole system, then we need to get the whole system into the room. Either everybody involved or trusted representatives of those people involved. So you'll hear about methods such as future search or search conferencing. You'll hear about World Cafe. You'll hear about open space technology. And you can look those up, and there's a lot of stuff online that explains what they are. But what interests me is the lack of clarity that can actually cause problems around the term whole systems change. Because whole system change has largely been about large group interventions, where somebody in the room facilitates a change, or a team might do it, or there may be self-facilitated change, but the whole organisation is represented. So you may see photos online of an open space conference or a future search conference or World Cafe where there are literally hundreds of people in a very, very large room over a day or two, where a key critical issue, which could be the organisation's future, where it could be turning around disaster, where it could be sharing values, launching, exploring new markets or products, happen by bringing as many people into the room as possible, and that is literally 100, 200, 300 people. And there are versions of this now happening online through meeting technology as well. Large group intervention. So we don't have a problem with large group. Now the word intervention is interesting because all of these methods are not about people being forced into the room, that they come freely, that there is an invitation, there is a sense of that meeting being well hosted, but the right people come because they come freely. That doesn't always sit well with the word intervention if there's a sense that the intervention is happening by the organisation itself. It's intervening in a problem, and people then come to that meeting not out of freedom or interest or curiosity or free commitment, but they come out of fear, a fear of losing their job, fear of being the people outside of the room where that is just not an option. So we have to be careful that if the large group intervention is an intervention by senior management who just use facilitators to carry out what they want and just see the method as a tool, the danger is that the intervention feels like at the worst end of that, about being pushy and forcing. So there's another kind of view of that intervention being much more collaborative, that the people in the room have come freely with the empowerment and the genuine support of the senior managers, who are hopefully in the room too, or have actually been in a position where they're now trusted, where there's trust for all parties, so that on Monday morning or whatever day follows this event, there is going to be some serious empowered action, that there is permission, that there is a process for continuity, and that the intervention kick-starts some change that's actually going to happen back at base. It's not going to, be undermined later. The plug isn't going to be pulled on it, because there'll be lots of stories where people have met for a day, come up with a whole load of motivation and energy, and then it's all been lost on Monday morning when the people not in the room, often the senior managers, the budget holders, simply don't support it. So I like the sense that a large group intervention is kind of a dual thing. It's the meeting in the room that could be a facilitated process of hundreds of people all focusing on their common ground, discovering what they have in common, their values, their commitment, their ideas, and then starting to focus on what needs to happen next. Now, that doesn't mean that it's organisation necessarily by democracy or free committee in the room. There could be a brief. There could be very, very clearly outlined the situation the organisation is in, the invitation to explore some key questions, to turn a bad situation around, to find our future together. But that large group intervention is the intervention of the people in the room and the organisation itself and its leadership, who are all saying, let's move together, let's do it quickly. A friend of mine once called it fast commitment, durable delivery, through a large group process where we can dive very deep, very quickly, through very, very good methods of dialogue, such as open space technology, such as future search, and many, many other methods too. There's another view that I think can be quite negative too, and that comes from the mindset of the consultant, the facilitator. And I often hear this in my own peer group as a facilitator, where someone thinks or feels, and it can be very, very arrogant and at least mistaken, that when they say, I'm doing a large group intervention, they actually feel that they're the instigator of it, that there's a large group in the room, and that it's the facilitator who is intervening, who has pitched for the work, who said, right, well, this is a way that we can get some significant change, and I've got this method. And you can feel their ego in the room. You can feel their wish to drive this process as if they're cranking up the room and delivering something successful that they've done before. With open space technology, they'll talk about the roots with Harris and Owen, and how if we can get everybody in the room to create our own agenda, then we will bring about change. And the rhetoric then is about the idea that the large group intervention is the large group itself intervening in its own future. But the mindset of the facilitator, who gets a bit too involved, who leads it a bit too much, who kind of dives in with their own self, is that they feel in their head, and they report back to their peers, that they are the large group intervener themselves, the hero, the superhero, the kind of shadowy boss, the temporary boss that's there for the length of the process. And that's when these things become a kind of consultancy product. And there's an arrogance behind it that doesn't actually help and can sometimes kill off that sense of large group intervention in the room. Now, I hope that happens less, but I certainly still hear that rhetoric around. So large group intervention doesn't tend to work when that is seen by people higher up in the hierarchy as something they're driving forward. And the rhetoric about volunteering and freedom is actually just rhetoric, and people come out of fear and they kind of minimise and they collude with mediocrity, and they play it safe and they pretend to take part. And then, of course, nothing happens on Monday morning, and if it does, it happens for the wrong reasons, and people are just complying rather than committing and feeling empowered. The second one is the facilitator then, who sees themselves as the large group intervener, the superhero, the driver of change. And that doesn't help either, because when they withdraw, they may well have created a dependency. People may not even get the process, and it can run out of steam afterwards. And then in the spirit of what Harris and Owen would call self-organisation, the large group intervention is the group itself when it's in the room. That is the intervention. They are self-organising that intervention. They create the agenda. They talk about what they're passionate about. And when that works with trust, that can be in partnership with an invitation from those with a strategic view. It's only the helicopter view. That's what leadership can be. It can be the inspiring, trusted view going forward of people who, because they're not too near the coalface, the interface of reality, is that they can dream, they can vision on our behalf if we trust them. And so they are part of the large group intervention as well, whether they're in the room or not, but there has to be trust and collaboration. So I think what we get is we get these mixed views of what large group intervention means. And I think it only tends to work in that collaborative, genuinely authentic, trusting way. And sometimes it works even better if we just get to work in the room and self-organise the conversation. And then we become the large group intervention.